Hi everyone, Eileen here. It's the weekend, so it's another Lavinia stamps video tutorial from me to you. And I am making this cardigan that I promised that I would, using this time VersaFine Clair Nocturne and the same Versamark, of course, along with gold embossing powder. So let's get going. Oh, I would like to show you the gold embossing because it's really pretty and the camera doesn't pick it up sometimes. Isn't that nice? Make a good Christmas card if you just put on a happy Christmas sentiment instead of the art from the heart that I've used. Right, enough. Let's get going. I've taken an A4 sheet of multifarious cardstock from Lavinia Stamps. I've folded it lengthways, creased it, cut it, and that's given me 2 cards. This one is 15 centimetres and then I've trimmed a little bit off the side so that it's 10. So that's 15 centimetres by 10. And the other card is just under 15 centimetres, so you're just going to get 2 out of that. And the other card I also trimmed to 10. Then I've used this Memory Keepers. We are Memory Keepers. The largest aperture here, 10 millimetres, corner punch, and taken off the bottom corners, and then that gives me a landscape card. Popping a bit of copy paper in the middle, like so. And starting off with, let me just check that I'm in shot. Okay, yes, I am. Starting off with the Thistle stamp, really lovely from Lavinia Stamps. It's well loved, as you can see. And VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And just inking up very carefully, trying to keep in the middle. I don't want the ink going around the outside onto the block or the stamp itself. So just taking a wet cloth, just removing any surplus ink there. And then drying that off. And then the first image is coming just off of the card and from the top, but down at a little bit of an angle, and then pressing really firmly. And that should give me, yes, look at that, beautiful stamp. And then inking up again, very gentle tapping again. And then leaving a bit of a gap, that's where I'm going to put the gold. And then moving down, and again, still at an angle, but not putting quite as much of the stamp on. So it's a different length going across. And round about there, I think. Okay. Like so. Now, what I should have done at the beginning was to put the stencil on first, and I didn't, but it doesn't matter actually, because you could put it on after anyway. So taking my heat gun, just going to waft it around. Like so. It's warped, but it will go back into position and place, no worries. And so putting my stencil down that I should have done to begin with, so you could do that if you want to, but it makes no odds either way. Popping that down, using some Sweet Poppy stencil tape to hold it in place. Popping that over. Oh, I want to cover that top area there, so move it like so. There, and then this at the bottom as well, so that should be quite firm. And I'm using Distressing Victorian Velvet if you do put the stencil on afterwards, just make sure that you've dried off that black ink, otherwise it will move. Hopefully it won't with this. And this is quite an old pad, so it's not very juicy. So just re-inking a lot the brush, coming down from the top like so, and then going out from the middle, letting this part of the stencil come right the way across the ink, not right to the edge. I want some white space, back to the top again, but fading out as I go across. So I'm going to get white space now from this corner, not going right across. More pressure on the middle again, and then coming down. Making sure I avoid this corner, so I've got white space right the way around the card, or a faded look in other areas. And this will be a faded area as well. I don't want it to be too dark, more dark in this corner. So let's have a look at what I've got. Yes, that's nice. So you can do the stenciling before or after. In this case, it worked. Whew. Okay. Now it's embossing ink time, but again, I need to make sure this distress ink is dry. So popping the heat gun on. So, bend it back into shape, wait for it to go flatter. Takes a while to go flat because obviously it's got to cool down. And Versamark ink, but before we do that, I've got an anti-static bag that I'm going to use, plopping that all over the image that I want to put the embossing ink onto. You can use corn flour for this. If you haven't got one of these, you can use talcum powder. Like so. And then Versamark inks. Well, love this ink pad. It's filthy dirty. Yes, it is. Now, before I ink up my Thistle stamp, I need to clean off as much of the black ink that I can. So that's wet cloth. And then a dry cloth. Where's my dry cloth gone? There it is. So that should do that. And then pop the ink on. Versamark ink, you can use Wow embossing ink or any embossing ink that you have. They all do the same thing. So I'm sticking to the middle of my image, as you can see, putting as much ink on as I can, avoiding the outside of the stamp. I don't want too much surplus ink going on that or on the block. So with a dry cloth, just taking that off from around those corners. You need to work quickly now, because otherwise the emboss powder won't stick because the ink will be dry. So I'm just going to do this middle gap first with as much of the image as I can get on of this stamp as possible, going across like so. You will see that it's black, and it's black because it's picked up of the ink before. At least it shows you that it's worked. And then just stamping up or inking up the top of it, then trying to work quickly. And then coming down from the top, I want to pop a little bit of gold there as well, like so. And then one more area, very carefully. Again, just the tip of the stamp. wipe off the excess again. I'm going to put just a tiny amount here, like so. Right, that should do. Now working quickly, take my card and gold embossing powder. Cover the image as quickly as you can. You are going to cover all the black images, the black stamps as well. Hopefully they will come off, but if not, you can use a brush to brush it off. Now, don't be too heavy-handed tapping, because otherwise you will take the gold embossing powder off of areas you don't want to. Gentle tapping, like so. Got most of it off. Then, with a dry paintbrush, just remove any from the areas that you wanted away from. So some of my black leaves have got gold on and I don't want them to have that, so I'm removing it very gently. Like so, and just removing any stray bits from the white area of the card, a bit along the top there. I'm getting this all right, hope so, like so. As you move it out, so more comes out. Right, I think that I'm done there. I'm going to go for that. Pop that down, take my heat gun. Now, before I switch this on, don't hold your embossing gun too close to your card. You could singe it or burn it. And as soon as you've melted the powder, don't linger, move off. So it's heat, melt the powder, move off and keep moving, but don't waft it about. Just move it and move away from the area that you've done. And then you should be fine. I just went over any areas that I'd missed, but other than that, I think that I've got them all. So, there you go. It's quite pretty, isn't it? Quite effective. The final thing to do, and it's best if you wait for your card to cool down, is to stamp a sentiment on the bottom. I will finish this off, but I would advise you to wait until it's cooled down, because sometimes because it's warped, it won't stamp properly. But I like to live dangerously. Okay. Art from the heart, and my heart, I'm going to just gently tap on some Versifying Clair Glamorous in red, of course, onto the heart. And then hopefully I can get a straight image just to the bottom, down, press up. Lovely. There we go. And And that's me done. So there is the card that I've just done. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Okay, it looks a bit buckled, but it will go back into shape, I promise. It will go flat. And it's got all that lovely gold embossing powder on as well. Thank you so much for looking today. Thank you for the lovely comments that you leave me. And for sharing your makes as well. I love to see the work that you've done and using my tutorials. Thank you so much indeed. I'll be back soon with another one, with another Lavinia Stamps video tutorial from me to you. Bye-bye. Thanks very much for looking.